I had the great pleasure of meeting Archbishop Denis Hurley when I worked in Durban in South Africa. I knew I was in the presence of greatness. Not only was he instrumental in dismantling the apartheid state of government, but he was also the youngest and longest service bishop at Vatican II. I remember distinctly two important observations that he made to me on the council. First of all, it was that never before in the history of the Church had there been such a gathering of great minds to come together for the council. Secondly, that it would take about 50 years for the teachings of the council to come to maturity. One of the great documents of the council was its document on the Church and its call to return to the sources of apostolic times. Pope Francis has been a champion of this in Latin America, and particularly with his emphasis on the formation of basic ecclesial communities. Now that he has become Pope, he wants to make these basic ecclesial communities the gift of the Latin American Church to the Universal Church. This ties in very well with Cardinal Cupich's call to renew my church and its emphasis on mission and discipleship. We have responded to this call here at St. Joseph's by looking at the formation of communities for the kingdom. We traveled to Nashville, Tennessee to enlist the assistance of Professor Bob O'Gorman and Paul Dukecki, who are experts in this field. Please enjoy the following presentation on communities for the kingdom.
Pope Francis has given a real new direction to the Church and an attempt to revive and to rekindle the life of the Church. And Cardinal Cupich has followed in suit with that in terms of an attempt to rebuild and reform the Church in Chicago. And the attempt at St. Joseph's in Libertyville follows in those steps.
So Kingdom for Community then would be one way of thinking about the renewal of the Church. And a Community for the Kingdom is one way of implementing what the Pope and Cardinal Cupich have in mind. In this case, it's a parish would have a group of communities, small communities, approximately 10 to 15 single people and families who come together face to face, and in so doing discover what pursuit of the kingdom that Christ talks about means. And what Christ means by the kingdom is trying to bring about a world of peace and justice. And so here we have a group of people coming together who spiritually develop on their own and look outside in terms of the possibilities of peace and justice.
So specifically here at St. Joseph's, the plan is to have a definite structure, certainly for the beginning of the forming of these communities. And there will be anywhere from 5 to 7 families and individuals that will make up this small group of people meeting in homes regularly, at least once a month. There's a suggested structure as these communities begin of some 7 steps. And the first is simply the welcoming, when the community gathers and welcomes. And then they'll move into a reading of the scriptures. Typically, these will be the scriptures for the coming Sunday. That will be the basis of the scriptures for the Mass. And then there'll be a time of just listening to these scriptures, letting people hear the voice of God come through in these scriptures. And then a sense of silence, aware of God's presence. The next step, the fifth step, is the step of sharing, and we'll elaborate on that in a moment. But it's talking about the things that have touched people's lives that have particularly been evoked by these scriptures. And then there's a movement to action. The Word of God can't be just kept in this small group of people. It has to move out to the parish and to the community and to the world. And so there's generally some sense of action that will come out following these discussions. And then finally, of course, there's a closing.
Sharing here means sharing the one's reaction to the reading that we just heard and listened carefully to, and the readings have a kind of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, they can apply to one's own life, one's own daily life, the struggles that one is having with family, with spouse, with job, and so on. And the readings often connect with that. And at the same time that you look to this kind of me and us internally sharing about, it turns out that these readings also look outward to the world and to the needs of the world, to the needs of the poor, to problems in the parish, problems in the larger society. And so the Word of God in the reading is so powerful that it has this double impact of enabling us to elaborate our own life experiences and coming up with insights into our own life experiences, and to coming up with insights about the larger world that surrounds us.
And I might just add to that one of the key things that happens in the sharing is that this sense of belonging is developed. When I'm sharing with another person on the basis of that reading some things that are going on in my life or some things I see in the world, and that person begins to share similarly, there's a sense of belonging, which is key to the meaning of church and certainly key to the meaning of these communities for the kingdom. These communities can be imagined as a drama or a play. First of all, the stage on which the parishioners are acting is that of relationship to each other and to the kingdom. And secondly, what goes on the stage is the drama, dialogue, reflection, conversation. But thirdly, purpose. The very rationale for the play is that of making life better off. Here we can draw from Aristotle when he talks about the reasons for drama. The play evokes feelings and moves people to encounter life with a better ethics and a better politics. In other words, communities move people to action. Greg Galuso, who's the founding and past director of the Gamaliel Foundation in Chicago, has stated that today we live in a society that is toxic to community. Now, what this means is that unlike the past, people migrate frequently and move, and thus parishes don't have a common racial and ethnic background. Diversity of jobs pulls people in different directions. They may not be with a particular parish for more than a few years. Typically, the pastor is preaching to people who do not know each other. And Galuso notes that Reinhold Niebuhr contended that we live today in a pre-Christian society, meaning that since we don't experience or understand community, we can't grasp the message of Jesus.
And indeed, we can create communities. Some evidence being that Greg Galuso about whom we were just speaking, has years of experience in developing communities across the country. And this work, which has its base in Chicago, can be broken down into three basic principles. The first being that you must have an intentional and intensive relationship building strategy.
There are several tasks that are involved in that relationship building strategy. A congregation must set aside time and have structures to encourage and challenge and train its members to get to know each other. The members of a congregation must know the pain, ambition, faith, family situation, and so on of at least some other members. It should be considered unacceptable that a person worshiping on Sunday is not known well by at least some members of the congregation. The priority of relationship building must be a part of the congregation's mindset and must be concretized into a definite planned action.
And the second principle is extraordinarily important, and it entails leadership. And immediately our mind would jump to leadership, the pastor. And the pastor has a role to play in this, but unless the pastor shares out his leadership function to members of the community, this will not work.
The development of effective lay people is not only necessary to relieve the pastor of the unending burden of the work, it's also an invitation to discipleship. Lay people today are looking for ways to live out their values. They will not participate in a congregation if they are just spectators. They need to be given responsibility. If this is to be the case, leaders must be trained and given jobs commensurate with their interests and talents. Some to teach religion, others to evangelize, others to work on stewardship, while many will want to engage in the work of justice and the building of viable communities.
And the third requirement, last but certainly not least, according to Galuzzo, is to work effectively in the public arena. The work of the church is to bring about the kingdom of God, which includes justice as a constitutive element of the gospel.
Historically, the church has seen and acted upon its responsibility to speak to political issues. This is biblically grounded, well established within the Christian tradition. There is also a very practical reason for political involvement. If the church ignores the oppression and problems of its people, the people will view the church as irrelevant to their lives. The problem is how to speak out effectively. Preaching without action is hollow. Setting up social service programs only addresses the symptoms. Dealing with national and international issues can be an excuse to avoid what is happening right around the congregation. In other words, the congregation must be able to act effectively in the public arena on issues that most immediately affect its members.
Here I'll quote myself. Work I've done for years and years in parishes, I concluded that a parish must be a community that enhances the spirituality and authentic human development of its members. Members should be growing, developing spiritually, and experiencing a meaningful psychological sense of community and relatedly a meaningful sacramental sense of community in the parish community. And the way of summarizing what is necessary here is that people must be able to experience a sense of membership, I belong, a sense of shared emotional connection. There's something emotionally that knits us together. That we get something, we get some of our needs, and others get some of their needs met by coming together in this community. And finally, and very importantly, that we have a sense that we have some control over what goes on in this kingdom, community for kingdom. That it's not just happening to us, that we can participate in making decisions about what happens within the group.
4 points of the sense of community that Paul has just pointed out can also be looked at in terms of the sacramental system of the church. Feeling a deep sense of belonging, membership, okay, is perhaps best expressed in baptism. Baptism is the establishing of a bond of unity with all creation, and with the Creator. A shared emotional connection is being emotionally connected to each other and mutually sharing values. And this is perhaps best expressed in the Eucharist. The Eucharist, the communion of intimate connection to the presence of the divine life, eating and drinking in Jesus' memory to form an intimate oneness. And then the integration and the fulfillment of needs. We get something out of being in the community. Being able to count on each other in times of need. Sacramentally, this can be expressed in several ways. In the sacrament of confirmation, being infused with the Holy Spirit that is characterized by a spirit of strength to witness. Also sacramentally expressed in marriage, matrimony, a covenantal bonding, creating an environment to grow the body of Christ. And also sacramentally expressed in reconciliation. A reuniting or a forgiveness of what has been pushed apart, a restoration of relationships. The key to the community is relationships. And there has to be attention to this reconciliation or restoration of relationships as we move along in these small groups. Finally, the sense of community is enhanced and made real by a sense of influence. That the feeling that members have a say of what happens in their parish. And again, I think this is best expressed by sharing the sacrament of holy orders, the exercise of the power of service to act on behalf of others in relationship to God and to serve the whole body in unity. So influence then means that members feel the need that members need to feel that they have some influence in the group, and some influence by the group on its members is needed for a group cohesion. This sense of community, both the psychological and sacramental nature of it, is what is going to be enhanced and emphasized in the development of communities for the kingdom here at St. Joseph's.
And as a matter of fact, how we would evaluate the success of these communities is whether or not the members of them experience the psychological sense of community and the sacramental sense of community. I don't know if it has struck some of you, but we say by rote the Lord's Prayer at least in every Mass, and perhaps when we wake up in the morning and we go to sleep at night. Thy kingdom come, Well, what does that mean? And I think the prayer tells us, the Lord's Prayer tells us what the kingdom means. Thy kingdom come. Stop. What is it? It's God's will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That's what the kingdom is. God's will being done on earth as it is in heaven. Among other things, that connects. It's not that there's earth and all of a sudden we go to heaven or hell. No, there is a continuity between the earth and heaven, and God's will in heaven is to be done on earth. And I think that's a very powerful notion. Now, that still doesn't say what the kingdom, what is entailed in the kingdom. How would you know it if you fell over it? And the work of biblical scholars in recent years has suggested that Jesus, what Jesus did in his mission on earth was to pursue peace and justice. It was a warlike time, and it was a time of great injustice in the life of people. And he took his time to be with people in order to enhance the possibility of peace, and especially to create situations that were more just. So that is peace and justice then might come to mind as you say kingdom in the Lord's Prayer. Now, another thing to bring in on this is something that we say all the time about the triune God, the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. That too has a meaning that applies in the immediacy of our lives. What scholars, theologians are suggesting is that the idea of the Trinity is a model for how we ought to be behaving as family, as church, and as community. In the Trinity, the Father, there are three persons: the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. They are equal persons. Therefore, they are equal in justice. One is not higher or greater than the other. They are equal. And not only are there three equal persons, but they are in communication with each other. And it is communication that entails love, and it is communication that also entails concern for the world beyond the community of Trinity. So thinking about any given community being, you might ask, is it like the Trinity? Is this family like the Trinity? Is this kingdom community like the Trinity? And therefore it becomes a model for what we might be doing, and also a model for evaluating. Are we being successful? Is what is happening like the Trinity?
Concretely, the way this relationship of the Trinity is manifested in the community is through love. God is love. And persons feeling love produces a sense of community. Persons feeling reconciliation from sinful relationships are asking for justice, and they're asking for mercy. Sin breaks the relationship with God, and mercy is God reaching out and bringing us back into relationship. Out of the larger world community, members experience alienation, and they come to these small family groups to experience acceptance and support. We come with a sense of broken relationships, seeking reconciliation, which we get from each other in the small group. This is an organic experience of reconciliation. It's beyond a 12-step support group. There is the divine dimension of a criterion that judges what is going on Justice emerges in relationship with mercy as the intimate relationship between peace and justice. The renewal of the church that Pope Francis is leading can be focused in three themes. They are synodality, preferential option for the poor, and mercy.
Now, synodality is a strange word, but the Pope says it quite simply as the laity, pastors, bishops walking together. It's the idea of walking together on a journey with everyone listening to each other, learning from each other, and taking responsibility for proclaiming the gospel. In making decisions about the church and which way it should go, the idea here is that the use of synods is the way to make decisions, not the Pope proclaiming from on high what a particular doctrine or way to go in the church. So it's not for a top-down, authoritarian, Vatican-oriented way, which perhaps has been the way the church has operated for a long time, but rather a more democratic way in which the various levels of the church have their voice must be heard, they must be listening, and then decisions can be made.
The second theme is the preferential option for the poor. And this is a term that has arisen since Vatican II, and particularly out of Latin America, where Pope Francis comes from. What it means is making the poor our first concern. And this is not just giving attention to each poor individual we find on the roadside. More than that, it's a choice, an option to act that is both structural, involving socio-economic change, and structuring, demanding a change in our way of thinking. Pope Francis has updated some sense of what the poor, what he calls the new faces of the poor, and he says they can be seen in the migrants, the victims of violence, displaced persons and refugees, victims of abduction and human trafficking, disappeared people, and drug addicts, girls and boys who become victims of prostitution, pornography and violence, or child labor, abused women who are socially excluded, and victims of the slave trade for sexual exploitation. All of these increasingly prominent contemporary evils have become hallmark concerns for Francis' papacy. The Pope has declared that inequality is the root of social evil. The option for the poor is not merely a humanitarian virtue, but finds its meaning in the very life of God. And here's a quote from Francis on this. Any church community, of course he would mean St. Joseph's, any church community, if it thinks it can comfortably go its own way without creative concern and effective cooperation in helping the poor to live with dignity and reaching out to everyone, will easily drift into a spiritual worldliness, camouflaged by religious practice, unproductive meetings, and empty tasks. So as St. Joseph, how do we experience the poor? Francis gives us a clue when he says that inequality is the root of social ills. The preferential option for the poor is a choice to act as I said earlier, both in terms of structural change and structuring, changing the way we think about the poor. We need to be engaged in consciousness raising. The heart of poverty is oppression. The aim of the option for the poor is the enhancement of freedom, the development of people, liberation from oppression. So communities for the kingdom means getting the communities to operate on earth as it is in heaven.
And then the third priority or theme brought forward by Pope Francis in his renewal of the Church is the concept of mercy. We just finished the year of mercy. This is something that is really on Francis's mind. It is a huge, big, all-encompassing concept, and so we need to try to get it down to where we can get our minds and heads around it. And so I might say that, simply put, the mercy of God is God's loving concern for each one of us. Now, that God loves each one of us. That's mercy. That's God's mercy. And love is the way God engages with His universe and with people. So mercy covers virtually every aspect of what we need to of what it takes to understand God and what God does in our lives. But there's another step that is required. It's not just God expressing His love for us, but now we have the obligation of expressing our love to each other. So mercy starts with from on high, shall we say, with God's relationship to us, and then we have the obligation to act in the world with mercy towards each other. I want to tell you why mercy is so important to Francis, rather than get theological and concepts and so on. Let me tell you why. It's not widely known that in the early priestly life of Francis in South America, he was in charge of one of the provinces of the Jesuits, and he was not widely respected. In fact, he was feared. He had quite a negative reputation, and that came from making decisions without consulting others. It was this top-down. He was operating the order not in the spirit of synodality, but rather as a top-down decision maker. And he was not listening to his fellow Jesuits. He was not listening to the world beyond the Jesuit order. And little later on, he was transferred to Cordoba, and it was a kind of an exile, a punishment for his being that way with the Jesuits. And in Cordoba, almost all of what he did as a priest was to listen to confessions, to engage in the sacrament of reconciliation. So he really got a feel for what people said, what concerned them in confession and so on. And what he realized is that he himself needed God's mercy to be forgiven for what he had done when he was in the leadership of the order. And he was hearing people in the confessional asking for God's mercy to be forgiven for the various things that were separating them from God. And he came out of that kind of dual experience of being a failure as a leader and spending several years in the confessional with a deep appreciation for mercy and the mercy of God, and that the church needed almost first and foremost to be merciful. And that is what catapulted him into his tenure as Pope Francis. That mercy then guided his way. This is going to be a church of mercy. We're going to have a year of mercy. We're not going to be judging people. We're not going to be damning people. We're going to be understanding what people's needs are and expressing mercy towards them. And therefore, mercy it's hard to think of a more central and meaningful concept in the church, and it is in fact Francis's priority. One might wonder how to put into action the Pope's three priorities. The priorities of synodality, of preferential option for the poor, and mercy. A simple but very valid answer would be to develop kingdom communities in our parishes, because as we have talked about them, they do instantiate, they do give, they are examples of, they put into practice the three principles that Pope Francis urges us to follow.
So St. Joseph's communities for the kingdom are a place to experience forgiveness, reconciliation, God's mercy. The face-to-face relationship of small group church can be an experience of the sacrament of reconciliation, the sacrament of mercy, and thus an experience of God's forgiveness, mercy. In psychological terms, we can call this a dimension of the sense of community, an expression of relationship.
Thank you for listening to this presentation. I look forward to you joining with me in making Community for the Kingdom a reality in our parish here at St. Joseph's in Libertyville.